What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed, the weekly panel discussion show. And before we begin, I've been gone for a couple weeks. I mean, we took 1 week off, the rare time that ever happens, because there were no events to talk about other than one of the farcical boxing matches, which I'm not doing the show for that. And then, of course, I had my second child a week ago. So, I've been in newborn life, but I've missed you guys. I've missed talking about fights. I'm so happy to be back. So happy to talk to my boys again. And let's go ahead, start the show, and introduce the two gentlemen who need no introduction because they were holding it down last week without me. First of all, the jack of all trades who's mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherlock.com, my man Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, I'm doing really well. It's great to have you back. We got a ton of fights to talk about. It's almost like we just saved up 3 weeks worth of stuff to talk about with you, but it's just 1 week. So good to have you back.
Definitely, man. And of course, we've got the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherlock.com and my good friend, Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on?
Yeah, I missed you, man. I had a lot of fun last week when Ben and I sat down and had a fireside chat over the fights, and it was an interesting dynamic. But it's always good to have you here steering the ship. And I don't have a good transition, so we'll just go into the stat of the week this week. The stat of the week is not a UFC stat, despite the big UFC event that happened. It is a Bellator stat. Hey, Bellator intern, how you doing? So 26, Yaroslav Amosov is the Ukrainian Bellator welterweight champion now. He just dominated Douglas Lima over at Bellator 260 in a very impressive, but Duffy and I both saw it coming type of performance. And he is 26-0, which, by the way, is the best record of any active fighter in major MMA. Because Khabib's gone, he's the guy. And I don't see him going anywhere for a while. So that 26-0, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Absolutely not. And in mixed martial arts, 26-0 is an impressive record. Even if you are fighting in Gladiator Championship or whatever, that organization still exists. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit more about the title change that took place in Bellator over the past week. But first, let's talk about a title that stayed exactly where it began, and that is Israel Adesanya retaining the belt in a dominant performance versus Marvin Vettori. I mean, how do we feel about this? I mean, this is Adesanya's return from the failed attempt to take the 205-pound belt versus Jan Blachowicz. A lot of question marks coming into it about what he would look like. A lot of question marks about what Vettori would look like, since he has clearly improved since the first time those two gentlemen met. But I'll throw the ball in your court, fellas. Do you feel better, worse, or the same about Israel Adesanya as the world beater he has a reputation of being?
I'll go first. I feel the same, and I mean that in a good way, because I thought that he was going to go back down to 185 pounds, remind us all that that is his house, and that he is one of the most dominant champs in the sport. He did exactly that. Vettori was a deserving challenger. Vettori was a guy who he thinks he won the first fight. No, he didn't. But he gave him one of the harder times that anyone has given him in the UFC. He had clearly improved since then, and Adesanya won the second fight even more clearly than the first. So yeah, I feel the same about Adesanya because the outcome was what I expected. But like I say, I mean it in a good way. He came and just reaffirmed how dominant he is. It's gonna take something special at 185 pounds to get him out of there. He weighs in at 183 pounds. You get the feeling that he's basically fighting at his walking weight, and he's not tired at the end of the fight. He controlled every minute. It wasn't super pretty to watch. I take that back. It was kind of pretty to watch. It wasn't like an absolute murder like the Whitaker fight or something, or it wasn't like the Gastelum fight, but it was a masterclass.
So Jay, I'm going to throw this in your hands. I'm going to throw a little twist on it. We know that coming into the light heavyweight fight, Adesanya made a big deal about not really bulking up and trying to put on extra muscle and trying to match Blachowicz for strength, and he was just going to go as himself in there with pure technique. In hindsight, I mean, that could have lost him that opportunity, but in hindsight, do you think that was a benefit to him this weekend?
I do. I think that fighters, by and large, should fight at their natural weight. I mean, I can't point to this as a specific example, but look at the co-main event. A fighter who had a notoriously bad weight cut, who showed up literally 1 minute before the weigh-ins, looking like the crypt keeper, going like, "Oh my God, I made the weight! Thank goodness." Adesanya weighed in for the Blachowicz fight at about 200 pounds, and that's rare for a contender or a challenger to come in that underweight for a title fight. And you could tell he was 200 pounds. Whereas Jan Blachowicz, it's easy to look at him and go, okay, he's probably about 225, 220.
He was every bit of 220 at least. I'm thinking 230.
That's about right. That's kind of what I'm thinking in that ballpark. And you could tell. I mean, you could clearly tell anytime there was a strength versus strength exchange, Israel Adesanya lost. Because I mean, he's never been that kind of guy. He's been more about finesse than he's been about brute force, whereas Jan Blachowicz grabbed hold of him and did that thing. Mark Vettori tried that, and he had some success for a little while, but he couldn't keep him down, and I think that has partly to do with the fact that Vettori came in, what do you say? Adesanya was about, 183 and change, so he was probably 184 and a half because he had a nice dinner before the fight, and Vettori was probably about 200, so that's not as stark of a difference. Maybe proportionally it is. Vettori wasn't able to implement that one game, which is too bad for him because that was his best chance at victory. It reminded me almost of the Holland fight, except for Holland couldn't get off his back, where Adesanya did, and he did, and he did, and he did, and he did. Here's the thing. I don't see Adesanya faring better if he has to cut a lot of weight to fight. I don't think big, bulky muscles will help him in his style. I think it would actually hinder his performance. I think it would slow him down, and he doesn't want that. He wants to be able to do the thing that I think I even mentioned in the Short Dog play-by-play, do the Anderson Silva thing, where he will hands down against the fence, go like this and dodge and weave, and if he were bigger and slower, it might not work. So I think this Adesanya is the Adesanya that can do it. But I'm going to throw a question at you, Ant. We've seen Adesanya beat some pretty tough challengers. I think he's beaten Whitaker, Costa, and Vettori, the top three guys in the division at the moment. Cannonier is kind of hanging out. Brunson he destroyed. Hermansson's kind of floating around. So what do you see as a real challenge for Adesanya? It sounds like Whitaker's going to get the next crack. And personally, I still believe Whitaker's the best guy that can dethrone him. Because of his striking, as long as he doesn't go, hey, I'm going to charge at a counter striker. But what do you think?
I agree with that. I mean, Whitaker is the most likely guy to do it. He has the right style of striking when he's fighting smart. I mean, he certainly was not fighting smart at what was that, 234 or was that
243?
243. Okay, yeah, just flip the numbers around. But here, I'm going to throw a serious curveball at you for this answer. You know, and actually, before I even throw the curveball, Whitaker also has the proper blend of wrestling that can throw things off. I doubt he has the strength necessary to hold Adesanya down, but but he's got enough striking to if he employs it properly to make Adesanya respect it, and those takedowns can add some hesitation. Perhaps he can gain an advantage that way. But the dark horse, Uriah Hall, that's the guy. That's the guy who I think provides the biggest challenge for Adesanya if he can get there. Now, the consistency of Uriah Hall is something that we can do a whole show about. And I do find it amazing that he's found himself in the top 10 of the middleweight division at this late stage of his career. And he's looking better than ever now that he's a full-time member of Fortis. But Uriah Hall will engage Adesanya in the way he wants to engage, and vice versa. They both will play into each other's the thing that the other one likes to do. That stylistically, I think, might be the challenge. Still, though, Adesanya wins that, I believe. I don't really see anybody beating him right now.
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
What did you think I was going to say?
The UFC tomorrow announced Israel Adesanya versus Kamaru Usman at 185 at the end of this year. Who you got?
Oh. Damn.
End of this year, no fights in between. So Usman starts preparing to fight at 185 right now.
Usman would be the bigger fighter in the cage. Isn't that weird?
Yep.
Yeah, he'd be the bigger guy. But the thing is, the speed difference, we'll see, because Adesanya will still retain a speed advantage. Without looking at their stats, I'm certain that Adesanya will hold a significant reach advantage. I still would favor Adesanya. I think it would be a tough challenge. Probably have a sort of a Gaslam vibe to the level of violence that we see in that, but I think Adesanya would get that done at the end of the day. But still, I mean, that's not a fight that I think we should be expecting. No. We should not be expecting that, for good reason. Their friendship and the importance that they hold to the prominence of mixed martial arts in Africa, specifically Nigeria, for both of them. That's a fight that doesn't need to happen as much as our entertainment would be pleased by it.
Unless next year, Ngannou versus John Jones and Adesanya versus Usman in Africa.
I mean, it's
a tough one because you want to win in front of your home country, and that would mean one of them would have to lose. So it would almost be better to have him fight mouthy American Colby Covington and upstart something.
Break Colby Covington's jaw in Africa, please. Like that sounds more pleasing to me than the two fighting each other. But still, I think Kamaru Usman certainly would be in the top 5 at least of potential challenges that could dethrone him, given the right circumstances. So that's something to say there. All right, fellas. I mean, I say Adesanya's stock remains the same here. I mean, he went out there and did championship shit. What else do you want from the guy? But can we give just a moment to highlight Marvin Vettori for whatever scorecards he is holding in his heart? How crazy is it that his corner, like Javier Cordero, was giving him the business between every round, giving him the business and giving him very clear, specific instructions on what to do to change the dynamic of this fight. Not only did Vettori ignore all of that, he also ignored the part where Cordero is telling him very clearly, you lost that round. You lost that round too. You lost the round before that as well. And in fact, you're losing the entire fight. You're going to have to do something different. And still, Vettori walks away from that 10 seconds after the verdict is read and says to Adesanya, I won that fight.
How?
And not even heat of the moment, because doubles down a day later.
I mean, you talk about the living embodiment of Bricktooth Tony from a Guy Ritchie film. Like this is him. What a complete numbskull to really think that he won that fight. I just couldn't believe it, man. I was sitting in my computer hysterically laughing at the idea that he really thought he won that fight. Oh man, Marvin, don't change the comedy.
Seriously,
just chef's kiss. All right, let's move things along here from a couple of interesting personalities that the sport has to offer to another interesting personality who's had quite a fantastic weekend. Brandon Moreno is now the UFC's undisputed flyweight champion, the first Mexican-born champion in the history of the promotion, and apparently already a star in Mexico. The crowd in Arizona, obviously a lot of Mexican fans in Arizona, gave him all sorts of love. I mean, to the level of Nate Diaz, like they were cheering this guy on. Their murals painted already in his hometown of Tijuana. Like this too. This is cool. This is absolutely cool. And with that in mind, fellas, do you think the UFC is better off now with Deiveson Figueiredo dethroned, as the champion. Do you think Brandon Moreno is better for the company?
The UFC had a really interesting predicament with Figueiredo because he was a killer. Like last wins, Perez, Benavidez, Tim Elliott destroyed them. John Moraga, Marco Beltran, he made the guy quit in the stool. Just a destroyer. And you want that for a division that is historically and statistically known for going the distance and being a less intense affair. So they almost hit go with Figueiredo, but he didn't have the personality to quite match that. They did give him a headlining spot for pay-per-view. Didn't they give him two? The Perez fight and then the because he headlined in 255 and 256. So the UFC believed in him enough to push that, which made me a little cautious to go, yes, they're better off in Moreno. But here's the thing, and this was actually not a point of dispute. Rarely on the Sherdog forums, it was in fact a point of consensus. You can't not like Brandon Moreno. He's a likable guy. Like there's no real detractors other than like Figueiredo's camp and a couple dumb people. He's just a very affable guy. He's goofy. He loves Legos. He's nerdy. He checks a bunch of boxes that people are going to like about him. And oh, that's right, he's born in Mexico, so he has that flair too. It was almost a win-win for the UFC because if Figueiredo had won the way I personally expected him to win, it would have been answering the questions, smashing his face off. Oh my God, this guy is real. He's starting to already get to approaching Mighty Mouse territory were the narratives that would have come from it. But now we have Moreno as a charismatic, enjoyable champ with a story that is comical to me that the UFC cut him a couple of years ago when they did what I called the Great Flyweight Purge, when they just said, we're going to get rid of this division. And he went over to LFA and smashed Michael Perez. And then he has been just on a tear or drawing ever since. So yeah, I'm swinging that this is a positive for them, but not as big as I think you guys might believe.
Okay, Ben, what's your take on this? Is this better for the UFC that Moreno is now champion?
Are you kidding me? Yeah, I'm swinging big on this. The UFC has for 25 years been trying to do this. Tito Ortiz, Cain Velasquez, Henry Cejudo, they've been using Mexican-American fighters to try to court that boxing-mad country to the south and the Spanish-speaking U.S. fan base. They've been trying it for literally a quarter of a century. They finally have a real live Mexican-born champion. He just happens to be a wildly entertaining fighter and a charismatic guy. I mean, you couldn't get a much bigger win than this. He is from Tijuana, and his parents made piñatas. It sounds like a fucking joke. It sounds like something that should have a punchline at the end, but it's literally this guy's background. Like, yeah, this is a huge win. And he has it all. Like, Jay said, he's got that kind of I'm into nerdy stuff charisma that, makes you think of some other, star fighters. He's got I've got my just a sweet and adorable family in the cage with me that has that little bit of Dustin Poirier pull to it. Like, he's got it all. All he needs to do is keep winning and keep having entertaining fights. And while there are people in the division who can beat him, I mean, I did the matches to make column for Sherdog after this event, and I said probably Askar Askarov should be next, and I thought Askarov won their draw a couple of years ago. But even if he doesn't hold on to the title and he has to win it back at some point, he is cemented as a star.
Absolutely. I mean, Ben, I couldn't agree with you any further than this. I mean, this is what they've been trying to do so this is why they had the Latin America tough seasons. Then this is why Yair Rodriguez got the push that he did when he did. And essentially Brandon Moreno has become everything that they hoped Yair Rodriguez would become. You put him in, in a friendly territory as far as the crowd is concerned, in a headlining spot, although this was a co-main, but you get the idea. You have him speak to the media. You have him engage on the level of a Mexican born fighter, and you hope for the best. With Rodriguez, they have such a high flying style that it's hard to not be drawn to that. Moreno, you have something I think is even more important than that high flying style. It's just a genuine likable personality. Like, to see Figueiredo get enraged during the press conference and try the trash talk and the shoving and so, and I mean, it was just like, bro, you're really mad at this guy? Like, I understand you two have spent 25 minutes battering each other to the head, but you know, that was just work. Like, you guys clocked out. Since then, what are you mad about? Like, he's like the sweetest human being that's ever put on a pair of 4-ounce gloves this side of Wonder Boy. I'm not understanding what's going on here. He really tried to drum up hatred, and I think that sort of thing becomes very contagious. I'm reminded of, you know, before some of the other aspects of her personality were revealed when she lost the belt, Joanna Jacek, where her being a sneakerhead became such a big thing amongst fans, and she was joking and laughing all the time, and people just gravitated toward her. Miranda Moreno has this, but it seems a lot more genuine even. I mean, the guy likes Legos. How do you hate on Legos, man?
If you step on them.
Yeah, actually, yes. I have stepped on a baby Lego in this house, and the baby one's hurt too. So I know that when my son moves up to the big kid Legos, yeah, that's pure agony. But you get the idea, fellas. I mean, the UFC is so much better off this. To promote a dominant champion who's going to knock your head off, really cool. Like, really cool. But to promote a man who essentially is going to bring an entire country into your fan base, much, much better for the bottom line. So the UFC should be very happy to see Brandon Moreno with that belt. And also do want to add one thing. I don't think Figueiredo lacked the personality necessarily, because he's got his own charisma about him. The man is an impeccable dresser too, by the way. But the language barrier, I think was a problem, and they were still trying to promote him as if Demetrius Johnson never existed. You know, it's still a sort of a legacy. And then with Henry Cejudo kind of vacating the belt, I think the legacies of those two men kind of hung over his head. So with Brandon Moreno, it feels like a fresh start as well. So
there's something I want to mention real quick. There was you mentioned genuine. There was a moment in the cage that I had to write up in the play-by-play as he's crying, and Dana goes and puts the belt over his waist, and his wife and daughter come over, and he hugs them and kisses them, yay. And he comes over, and right before he talks to Joe Rogan, in his hands he has his belt, and he just looks at it, and starts crying. There was like a 15-second magic moment that I very much caught on and went, okay. This guy, he could be something.
Yeah, man. I don't know what was going on during that time, but it was just like this weird like thing in the air. It's like it's tearing up and stuff. It's like, I don't know. It's like onions or something, man. It's crazy. All right, fellas. So let's move things along here. I mean, of course, the sort of the people's main event over this weekend. Nate Diaz made his return against Leon Edwards. You know, sort of 24 minutes of what we expected. Nate Diaz getting battered from pillar to post. 1 minute of the fantastic grit that the Diaz brothers seem to showcase however they possibly can at any given moment. And that, strangely enough, seems to be the story of the fight, not the 24 minutes of getting mollywopped, but the 1 minute of a single hard punch landing and pointing at the victim there. Fellas, Leon Edwards stock, has it gone up or down based on this in your eyes?
Go ahead,
Same.
Duffy.
Yeah,
Same.
I think his stock is exactly where it was. I mean, he was, before this fight, a deserving contender for the welterweight title. He was, before the Muhammad fight, a deserving contender for the welterweight title. Like, if timelines had played out differently, he could have gotten the title shot and nobody would have really screamed about it. So what did I learn about him? Well, I learned that he is a better boxer wrestler and at this point in their respective careers, better grappler than Nate Diaz. And I learned that, hey, you know, after 24 minutes of work, he can be caught and can be rocked and can be put in trouble. But it doesn't. If Kamaru Usman beats him, that's not how he does it. So it's not like it changes how I think a fight with Usman turns out. So yeah, like literally nothing has changed about how I think about Leon Edwards, you know, other than it's problematic that he is so susceptible to other fighters dictate, like a lesser fighter dictating the pace of the fight to him. Like just the fact that so much of the fight was Diaz kind of dancing away, half turning his back, sticking his ass out, and Edwards just kind of let it happen. I mean, that's a little troublesome, but it's Diaz. He kind of mesmerizes people. He's like a snake charmer or something. Yeah. That's all I can really say about it. Diaz is exactly who we thought he was.
All right. So Jay, let me give you the flip side of that coin. Nate Diaz's stock, up or down, or the same?
Man, gave me this one. It went up. Isn't that messed up? He lost a clear-cut decision in which he won one round because he had 90 minutes of good work and some good damage. But his fight IQ or whatever it may be, his style, his game plan, whatever poison is in his mind made him go, I have this guy hurt more than anybody has ever hurt him in his career. I'm going to point at him. I'm going to point at him and I'm going to laugh at him. I have this guy in the ropes. He's falling around the cage. He has taken shots that Dos Anjos and Usman and Cerrone and Vicente Luque couldn't do to this guy. I have him on ice skates. I'm going to mock him. I'm going to showboat. I've lost this fight so embarrassingly that I decided to not win this fight in spite of you, all your fans. It was mind-blowing. He has the cardio to do this. I saw a lot of chatter on the MMA community about, oh, those Diaz brothers, they always turn it on in the last round. No, they don't. This is not a Diaz thing. This is not a Diaz. The whole thing of this fight is not a Nate Diaz thing. If anything, it's a Nick Diaz thing, which, by the way, is his brother, a different fighter that hasn't won a fight since, 2011 or something. This was uncharacteristic and embarrassing, and just Diaz could have won that fight.
Yep.
Period. The end. He could have knocked out Leon Edwards or got him down and hurt, because his brain was scrambled, and done something and finished the fight. But he didn't, because he didn't want to, or because he didn't. I don't know the deal. Like, there was no Edwards was playing possum and he was going to try and rope a dope and catch him. No. Edwards was just, Rocky was rocked so badly, it almost defied description. And Diaz just played the game. And I was so disappointed, but I'm even more disappointed that his stock went up. Like, straight up. The guy has lost 3 of his last 4 fights convincingly. Had moments. I mean, I maybe I shouldn't say convincingly, because I actually scored the Conor 2 fight a draw, but Jorge Masvidal boxed his face off. Edwards beat the brakes off him for 4.5 or 4 and change rounds, and he beat Pettis along the way. He's going to get a title shot before Leon Edwards. Like, I'm going to chime in on the question you didn't ask me, because I need to say it. Edwards' stock went down. Period. The end. Because Dana White never likes to talk about matchmaking, about what's next. And he very clearly said Edwards is not next for the title, that Colby Covington is. For Dana to actually break with his norm, whatever that may be, to not talk about matchmaking decisions and actively say Edwards is not getting the next title shot, despite an unbeaten streak back to 2015 when he lost a close fight to the champion. This was the worst thing that could happen to Edwards. Because it's like the end of the round, at the end of any round, and you go, oh, he stole the round. Diaz stole that fight, even though he lost it convincingly because of the very last seconds. And it just blows my mind.
What a ridiculous sport that we decided to cover. Like, how insane is that? Someone can get their head caved in for 24 minutes. But
he was missing part of his head here.
Yes,
there was a hole in his head.
Like, this guy was getting just slapped silly around the entire cage, and all he could offer was his ass. to taunt and middle fingers. He offered literally nothing in the form of dangerous offensive output. And in the one moment that he does has now become the story of the fight. And amazingly, his stock has gone up. While, and I agree with you on this one too, Jay, Leon Edwards' stock has gone down. And it's not because of anything that's fair or just. It's because stupid people believe stupid things.
Sure do, man.
I am going to be fed up to my eyeballs with the whole Nate Diaz coming on in the later rounds thing as well, because that is not true. It just isn't true. You look at the stats, you look at the results of all of his fights. That is just not true. It never has been true, except for last weekend, except for Saturday. That is the only time. And now the Diaz army will cling to that like it's their last two fingers on the edge and their Wile E. Coyote.
Like Diaz
Okay?
125.
Yeah, like this is going to be nonstop foolishness. But I can't lie and say it's not fun for the sport. So here I am being a dummy and going ahead and joining the circus. So
I know we're running along, but I want to quick ask you both the question. Who do they make him fight next? Duffy, who do they make Diaz? He's got one fight left in his deal. He wants to fight in a couple months. Who does he fight next?
That's really a great question. I mean, my thought was that, okay, if Poirier beats McGregor, finally make McGregor Diaz 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. The loser of McGregor and Poirier 3 should get that fight, I believe.
I think both fights make sense. I mean, Diaz Poirier was supposed to happen. Conor Poirier 3. If they're both on 2-fight losing streaks, someone's got to get back in the win column. So that's a win for the UFC. But he sounds like he wants to get back in sooner than that. And because the fight, I think he said, did he say August or did he say 3 or 4 months? Diaz said in the
I think he said 3 or 4 months.
Okay, so I mean maybe because the Conor Poirier fight's in July, maybe it'll line up. I want Vicente Luque.
Oh, good grief.
I love the action potential of that fight.
Never gonna happen.
I mean, it'd be great to get Luque over.
That's exactly right. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, if the knockout or the submission win over Tyron Woodley wasn't enough, so I don't know. I can't believe this is happening. Who else was like just like gritting their teeth and like clenching their butthole a bit during that last minute of that fight?
Jake Shields.
All right, fellas, let's keep things pushing here. There was
one last thing.
Oh, of course.
Like in defense of Nate Diaz, the tweet from Leon Edwards a couple hours ago.
Yeah,
Nate told me after the fight, "Don't let these motherfuckers tell you ain't shit. Name your price or they'll name it for you." And
dude,
I felt that.
Dude is like, he's
for like
he's
being in the company while never bowing to the company. Nate Diaz will always be a hero on some level.
Yeah. Nate Diaz got a 5-round non-title, non-headlining fight. That had nothing to do with Leon Edwards. That's all Nate Diaz. He got that happening.
He also speaked a belt into existence.
Yeah,
and slapped Dana White in the face on camera.
Yep.
And oh yeah, he and slapped USADA as well.
Oh God, you got to apologize.
Oh my God.
So I mean, we can disparage him for his fight IQ. We can disparage him for just his odd times to taunt fighters.
Needing subtitles.
Yeah,
as a native English speaker.
There are several things that we can point to the toxicity of a lot of his fan base. Yeah. There are things to point out as criticisms of Nate Diaz and the company he keeps. One thing we can't question though is his business acumen and his determination to stick to his guns. So salute to Nate Diaz on that. Mm-hmm. All right, so
I mean, yeah, he got Arizona to change their marijuana stance on fight week. What he smoked at the press conference was no CBD. Yeah. That was the real deal. And the Arizona's like, I guess we can't cancel this fight now. We need it. Oh crap! And we changed it, and they changed it.
I was wondering about that too because I meant to look this up. Well, that's my daughter right there. I meant to look this up, but I just totally spaced on it. When he started smoking, and I know they're in Arizona. I know Arizona is a conservative state for the most part. If
pretty
I'm not
draconian
mistaken,
for a long time.
Yeah, so I don't know what the marijuana laws are there, but part of me was expecting what was like, it's like a cop gonna just rush the stage and slam his head on the desk.
What, big boss man gonna come out and take something?
Yeah, it's like,
dude wearing like reflective shades indoors.
Yeah, I kind of expected that, but I mean, Nate Diaz would be the guy to go into a territory that isn't, marijuana friendly, and sit there in public on camera with police officers guarding the venue.
They're guarding him. They're guarding him,
specifically guarding him, and blowing chronic smoke in their face. Like, he would be the guy that can do that. So, man, shout out to Nate Diaz, man. All right, fellas, let's keep things pushing here, because Claressa Shields, championship boxer. Some regard her as the best female boxer of all time. She's certainly in that discussion. Made her mixed martial arts debut last week at PFL. Got a TKO after coming back from a fair amount of adversity. She has already set her sights on Kayla Harrison, the judo master, to fight sometime next year, is what she's saying. Good idea or bad idea, fellas?
Let me preface this by saying that I am not here to like shit all over her performance in her MMA debut. I think for somebody who is, let's face it, barely trained against a BJJ brown belt who, is a legitimate like woman roughly her size, she didn't do too badly. She survived on the ground, showed some good athletic instincts. Her ground and pound is like a fucking nail gun. Like, you can laugh at her not knowing what to do when Brittany Elkin was sitting on her chest for basically 10 minutes. But once she was on top, that shit was over. Like, that was some of the more painful, like, ground and pound, I've seen from a, yeah. Whew. Having said that, Kayla Harrison is not the fight she wants. Like, unless you want to reenact UFC 1, like, if you can't get out from under Brittany Elkin, you have literally nothing for Kayla Harrison. And unlike Brittany Elkin, Kayla Harrison is a plus athlete. She can be bigger and stronger than you, and probably about as quick. So, yeah. But I mean, that's not to disparage Claressa Shields. She had a successful debut. There's some women out there she can beat. I hope she collects some paychecks. I hope she inspires more boxers to cross over in their prime. That's the coolest thing about her. She is, in the history of boxing and MMA, the highest level boxer that has crossed over to MMA this close to their prime.
Exactly. This wasn't James Toney, who by the point that he came over to UFC 118 was like, I think he had a regional heavyweight belt or something, but he certainly was not fighting top level competition, and clearly physically was just well past, like, did not care anymore.
50 pounds above his best fighting weight, 5 years past anything resembling his prime. Right.
Or Holly Holm, living out a full boxing career, and then
she was like 34 when she came over to the UFC or something.
Then coming over to mixed martial arts, or even like Ray Mercer in his, silly fight with Tim Sylvia, and he was like 83 or something at the time. Like, this was like a real fighter in her prime. Now, I think what's going to trip her up though is the desire to keep boxing.
Boom.
That's going to be it. That will be her undoing, especially if she wants to fight Kayla Harrison. If you think Brittany Elkin gave you hell while sitting on your chest, let me just say this, and I think we all can agree. While Brittany Elkin could probably beat the crap out of me, she did not look like she had much of a game plan once she got on top. She wasn't offering any real meaningful offense. The ground and pound was pretty ineffective. Kayla Harrison will do much, much worse than that if she's in that position, if she doesn't decide to rip your arm off. Yeah. So,
yeah, I can't. I get that she wanted to do it next year for the next season of the tournament, but if say if she follows the path and she fights once more in like August or so during the playoffs, and maybe they put her on the December card to kind of break up the title fights, because there'll be 6 title fights and those are exhausting. Maybe she'll be 3-0 if she gets suitable opponents that she can beat, and that's saying something. You know, they're gonna bring in Mariel Chernescu, who's like, you know, 3-11 or something. It's just it's tough sledding ahead for Claressa Shields, and I laud her for her survival ability. She didn't take much damage when she was mounted for most of the fight, and she still had the gas tank to turn it around, like the end of the second round. But there were a few moments in that fight that I just, man, I can't cry foul because it's not my place and I don't see it, and I don't know how tired she was. But Brittany Elkin had an armbar locked up and towards the end of the second round. She's a BJJ brown belt. Sure, she hasn't submitted anybody in her pro MMA career. She's done grappling competitions. She's hit some submissions before. So she's done this before. And she just kind of slid out of it. She slid out of a clear locked up armbar that was done. It was done. Like, I'm sure if you had watched it over again, it was good. I'm like, oh, this fight's over now. She got the armbar. And then it just wasn't. And then just kind of went away. And that made me feel really funny. It made me feel kind of scuzzy that I thought, because I didn't want to have that feeling watching this fight, because I wanted to be pumped about Claressa Shields. I wanted to be excited about the prospect of a boxer in her prime. Legit, I don't believe the GWOAT thing. She's 26 years old. She's not the greatest woman that has ever lived because she's boxed 11 women as a professional and won some gold medals. Very impressive. But GWOAT, come on, give me. But skipping past that, I loved the idea of her inspiring a new generation of boxers coming over, like Amanda Serrano had done or tried to do, Heather Hardy tried to do. But all those women kept jumping back and forth between boxing and MMA, and that's such a bad decision. You don't want to have to take your time and do whatever. Look at Conor. What happened when he came back from boxing when, oh, wait, I got to fight somebody who's going to take me down? How do I stop that again? Oh, that's right, I get my neck ripped off. It's just not a good kind of position that Shields will be in if she decides to skip back and forth and train BJJ sometimes, you know, because she's not training wrestling defense or takedown defense or offensive guard or any of that when she's boxing. There's no training at all. So she's going to take 6 months off her training to go box again and then come back. That's just not conducive to an MMA career. My stock isn't very high on her because the PFL brought in Brittany Elkin to lose. I like what I've seen from Brittany Elkin and her victorious performances. I've done the tape study. I probably built most of her fight final profile by looking at her old fights. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how the PFL is going to build her, and I'm concerned that it's going to go 3-6 Brittany Elkin, 1-2 Jenna Fabian, 10-0 Kayla Harrison. You know, it's going to be over real quick, and I'm hoping that Shields can avoid that fight at all costs. And
if they push it to next year, is the promise of a possible Shields fight even enough to keep Kayla Harrison happy and at PFL?
Right. I mean, and really, can PFL hold on to Shields because she only has like a 3-fight contract, if I'm not mistaken.
I think 2 more left. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very possible that this matchup won't even be possible when it's all said and done. Yeah. So I mean, very, very interesting, but I do love the fact that she went and took the chance. And the way she won was spectacular to watch. All right, fellas, so we're going to try something different. We've got a new segment here called Shallow Cuts. Each of us will have a single minute to discuss a topic. So I think I'll start this one off here. Thoughts on the stoppage of Paul Craig versus Jamahal Hill. So let me go ahead and make sure the clock is ready to go. And oh, you probably didn't hear the bell, so let me go ahead. You heard it? I got to turn the volume because that was such a low ding. Here we go. All right, so I think you guys know what I feel about the stoppage. What a ridiculous display of quote-unquote refereeing. Apparently, this guy, Al Guinee, is a guy who has developed a reputation in Arizona, courtesy of friend of the show, Jose Youngs. this is something that he's seen before from Guinea in the regional scene. I think Sean Al-Shadi, another friend of the show, echoed those sentiments as well. So this guy just sucks. He doesn't belong anywhere near a cage, especially a cage where high-level fighters are fighting at the highest levels of the sport. Get him all the way the hell up out of here. Like, how do you not see a man's arm flopping in the wrong direction while you are right beside him? It's not like he was in a bad position just by the flow of the action, which can happen if he was behind and you didn't see the arm. All right, I'll excuse that for a few seconds. But other than that, total trash. Get him all the way the fuck up out of here, please. Ooh, all right. Nice. Right on a minute. That was nice. Beautiful. All right. So, Ben, I'm going to throw this one in your direction here. How do you feel about Yaroslav Amosov's one-sided beating of Douglas Lima at Bellator 260? Who do you see able to dethrone him?
Jay and I, in your absence last week, talked about this fight, and we both had Amosov in this one. Just, you know, Lima had not faced a wrestler of this level since probably Ben Askren. Yeah. So he lost badly to Askren. I don't see anyone dethroning him for a while. There's nobody there for it. I'm not picking Neiman Gracie to beat this guy. Not picking Ed Ruth. I already saw him fight Logan Storley. That's when I really started buying stock in Amosov, when he out wrestled Storley so badly. Rory McDonald's gone. I know what a Lima rematch is going to look like. This guy could. I mean, this guy will end up 30-0. I mean, there you go. He'll be 30-0 before like anyone comes along that's even a threat.
All right, and there we go. Perfectly done, Ben. Jay, the last question is all in your hands. With his loss to Bilal Muhammad, is this it for Demian Maia?
Maia has historically had real problems with getting the fight to the ground. I mean, granted, his recent competition has been spectacular, but he had a run that I believe it was like 0-48 for takedown attempts. Covington, Usman, and let me think, Woodley. And he couldn't get the fight down to save his life after trying almost 50 times. This was the same situation going against Muhammad. And Maia, I don't know if he's an old head or too much of a specialist, but he couldn't change his game plan. He couldn't change his approach. He was stuck. And to me, that was more of a death knell for his career than anything, is that he said, the single isn't working. I'm going to try it 21 more times. And it saw the ceiling. I'd rather see him do grappling competitions. I'd rather see him go to Ryzen and have some fun, maybe do an exhibition with Kleber Koki Herbst. Just have fun. You're close to the end. We love you. And it's time for you to be a coach, something else.
So I've accidentally had my mic muted when the bell rang, but you were just a second over. So it's all good. All right. Fellas, now it's time to grab your seasoning salt, grab your black pepper, grab your paprika, whatever other seasonings tickle your fancy. It's time to ask the age-old question: how's taste my crow? Ben, how's taste my crow?
Oh man, I went 7 for 14 at UFC 263, so I got plenty of things to eat crow about. I'm happy to be wrong about Figueiredo versus Moreno. I'll go ahead and give some dap to Paul Craig, just because some dude from Scotland came charging into the comment section of the live recap and just like really started giving me hell. So, specifically because on the preview, I said, I mean, he's going to be reduced to like pulling guard, and when's that going to work? And then he pulls guard and rips a man's arm off in like a minute. You know what? Is that 4 straight wins for him in the 205-pound division? The guy
Shogun of the pretty much.
I'm not saying he's Demian Maia, but in an era when we're seeing Demian Maia as maybe one of the last true specialists kind of breathe his last gasp as at least as a contender, because I mean Maia's only lost to top 10 guys even now. Like Paul Craig, just lighten the torch for the true specialist. You know what he needs to do to beat you. And he's still doing it at the UFC level. I was dead wrong. He pulled guard. It worked. And he's a fringe contender. Like the guy's knocking on the door of the top 15, just as one-dimensional and apparently unathletic a fighter as you'll see. He is finding ways to win. That is incredibly admirable. I'm eating all kinds of crow. It is Scottish crow, so it's like crow haggis, like stuffed with the lungs and like testicles of other crows. But I gotta eat it anyway.
I mean, I think we're all gonna have a bite of that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Not many of us saw that happening. No. Jay, how's Taste My Crow this week?
Yeah, man, I was on Team Hill all the way until the wheels or the elbow fell off. But I'm going to go with the co-main event that a lot of us also probably got wrong. I was dead confident that the two champions would retain their belts. For the Sherdog Prime Pick section, I was part of the two-part parlay that would have gotten plus money because I had Deiveson Figueiredo winning big. On the last week's show, I fully expected that he was going to learn his lessons from the groin shot that he lost the point for. He wasn't going to be quite as reckless, and then he didn't show up. Like to equate it to like Donald Cerrone getting there against Rafael dos Anjos and just getting cleaned out and going, "Oh, I'm done here." It felt like a flan just kind of compressing and flattening in the cover just after it leaves too long. It was just a very deflating performance that I have to feel the weight cut was a big part of it. I'm going to stick to that, whether it's a true narrative or not. It's true up here, so that's all that matters. It's Figueiredo looked just so bad on the scales, and it looked like that when he came out there. He just looked tired. He looked unable to pull the trigger. I don't know if it was because of the last fight also, like because Moreno hurt him. It hurt him in a way that nobody really had before. I think that's kind of the narrative of this fight, like Diaz hurting Edwards. No one had really rang Figueiredo's bell, and Moreno hurt him in the third or fourth round of their first fight, and it was very surprising. Figueiredo didn't do any of the things he always does, and I don't mean always in a in an anecdotal sense. I mean like in a statistical sense. Like everything was off about his performance, and I'm blaming on the weight cut. And the weight cut is an extra salty bit of layer on top of this crow because man, oh man, I botched that one.
All right. Yeah, I think a lot of people will join you in that as well. So I'll have a bite of that. My House Taste My Crow this week isn't really, I mean, I don't have to season it that much. It's not a piece of crow that I'm upset to eat, but it just kind of surprised me. And that comes from the ladies bantamweight division. Pannie Kianzad able to get the decision over Alexis Davis. Davis moving back up to bantamweight, being the better grappler. I thought she just had the right style to kind of neutralize Pannie. So I thought that was going to happen, and especially when the fight began. And while I found it odd that Davis wasn't, going for any takedowns, which I don't think she went for a single takedown that whole fight, if I'm not mistaken. And if so, it was much, much later in the fight. The leg kicks were working, and you're fighting someone who's so boxing centric. Taking that lead leg out is a very, very good idea. And she was doing that. Then she just kind of abandoned it. It was like I should be eating crow for the overall pick, but I should also be eating crow for my in-fight thoughts as well. Maybe I was a little biased because I probably said this on the show before, but at what fight week was, I think it was like UFC 239. Kianzad was on that card, and like at media day, she looked strangely like one of my ex-girlfriends. And I just, it's like, it was just, so I was like, man, Alexis Davis, you need to win this.
Win it for my heart.
Yeah, like it just win it for my sanity. But yeah, so that's what's got me eating crow this week. So
I had Davis winning, but I'm not mad that Kianzad got the nod.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's better for it's certainly better for the division that Kianzad wins. I mean, she does have a more I guess, fan-friendly style. She's a newer face. So yeah, it makes sense to me. But you know,
she doesn't have front teeth.
She does not, which I did not realize until that fight was over. Was that the first time? Yeah, I didn't know that.
She got him knocked out in Tough. Like the first or second week, she got nailed by something, and then boop, they're gone.
Oh yeah, because I haven't watched Tough in like 12 years. Yeah, no, I'm definitely not watching this new season.
Oh no, right? I haven't touched that one yet.
Yeah, trash. All right, now let's move on to the greatest title segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. Jay, I'll begin with you. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
It's about the Jamahal Hill Paul Craig fight, but not for the reason you might think. It wasn't about the flop or anything like that. Before the fight, there was a lot of bad stuff going on. I guess that's I don't know how to put it more lightly than that, but there were some real racial problems, and there were people using racial slurs against Hill, and it was really nasty business. They weren't friendly at the weigh-ins. There was no glove touch. There was no, there was a lot of bad blood that went into this fight. And then you end it like that with a fight where there's a bad injury. Even despite that, Craig looked to the ref and said, "Hey man, I don't want to keep hitting this guy, so why don't you stop?" So they buried the hatchet, I guess, after the event. Okay, Duffy knows what I'm talking about. And they decided to go party together and got tore up. I think turned up, I believe, is the expression that Jamahal Hill used.
So it is what the kids say nowadays.
Yeah, I'm too old for that stuff. And there's a picture of them just jamming out, headbanging, rocking out, clearly intoxicated, big cast on Hill's arm, and they're having a great time, and they're good. He says, "I don't care what anybody else said. Not only did he get my drunk." Oh, anyway, they patch things up. So I'm surprised and not surprised. In the MMA, man, a lot of things get solved by just hitting each other in the face.
Yeah. People should punch each other in the face more often. It makes for a more fair, equitable world. Yeah. Ben, what is your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment?
It shouldn't surprise me, like the type of just knob slobberers that get credentials to UFC events when legitimate journalists and entire outlets cannot. But shout out to the nameless knucklehead at the UFC 263 post-fight presser who asked Dana White if he is, in charge and spearheading the restoration of the First Amendment in the United States. I mean, we are reaching end stage UFC media relations where they are weeding out the people who ask hard questions or even relevant questions for like this kind of puffery. And I say that as somebody who's been credentialed at UFC events before and even asked a few questions from time to time. I'm not exempting myself from being part of the problem. But when I see people at these events, like the other guy I will not name, but is very famous and just basically treats it as ultimate fan experience every time he's there, or now this guy that I literally don't know his name and don't want to know it, like what are we even doing here? Like, what is even the point of this? What is the UFC's end game? Is their end game, John Morgan, all respect to him, asking, a series of pretty standard questions to the fighters, and then just a bunch of random Twitter heads like sucking Dana off? Is that the end game? I don't know. Yeah. I shouldn't be surprised, but I was.
When Steve-O asks better questions, remember when Steve-O interviewed Glover Teixeira after he won his last fight? When Steve-O asked better questions than some reporter, we got problems.
We got a big problem. My I'm not surprised moment is actually the entire post-fight press conference. Like, because as much as I want to highlight that dummy that asked like Dana White essentially if he was like G.I. Joe or whatever,
savior of the Constitution.
Yeah, I like Dana White is fucking Paul Revere and to this knucklehead. Beyond that, like the whole press conference was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in one of the dumbest sports that the world has ever conceived. Why Why are they just handing credentials out to goofballs like candy? Some of the questions that were asked, some of the statements being made were just complete drivel. Like, you mean to tell me that like an outlet like Bloody Elbow is pushed to the sidelines? I like my other home, the Body Lock, isn't officially credentialed. A lot of good, relevant work comes from there. Not credentialed. Josh Gross, my former colleague, I guess you guys work with him now at Sherdog. Like Loretta Hunt, like you think about the people who have drawn the UFC's ire because they were like doing a good job. And you think about who is actually sitting at press row now. It's nuts. It's nuts. It's amazing that a guy like Mark Raimondi is still allowed in the building because he'll push back. It's amazing that my good friend of the show, Oscar of the Mac Life, like he still can like do his thing. Because man, aside from a few very specific names, there are some really, really bad examples of quote unquote journalism, and not even just the pure journalism, because I don't think like even like Oscar himself will not call himself a journalist, and there are some of us in MMA media that don't subscribe to being journalists necessarily, but just being poor examples of actual relevant media. How just absolute gutter trash. And I know you two gentlemen sit on the board for the MMA JA. So forgive me if I step on toes, but you guys know how I am. Man, what counts as a journalist these days? Because that was several different levels of deep fried ass crack that we saw at post 263.
Yep.
So bad.
Yeah.
They're not members of the MMA JA, so at least there's that.
Yeah, there's that. So thank God. Like, wow. what an absolute dumpster fire. All right, fellas. So we are pushing toward the end here. So we've got PFL coming up this week. Rory McDonald and Gleison Tebow head that card. We got the UFC, of course. The train keeps moving. Korean Zombie versus Dan Ige in that main event. But we also got Fight Circus 3.
Most importantly,
what excites you more?
Fight Circus by a country mile, and you should know that because of me. But I guess I'll jump in here and say this UFC. I don't even know what the designation is. Is it 190 or is it ESPN 25? I think it's an ESPN card. This is an ESPN. This is an ESPN card. I'm yelling. I'm shouting because of.
Oh, it's not ESPN Plus.
No, this is a literal straight up ESPN. Might be ESPN 2. This is this event will be aired on national television in front of bajillion homes. That card. What? UFC, what happened to you? Like, this is a real strange turn of events that this Korean Zombie Ige card, which, by the way, Korean Zombie Ige, that's a good fight. Not maybe a fringe great fight. Like, when I think of all the matchups, because we talk about this all the time, there's not a bad fight in the top 10 of the featherweight division. But this isn't necessarily one that would jump to the top of the list. That's it. Like that, this card is not, man, I mean no disrespect to the 26 competitors on this card, but this is a card that I am begrudgingly accepting because Fight Circus 3 is happening. Now, there's a bit of news. I guess I'll break it on the show, even though it was actually made public yesterday. The phone booth Muay Thai fight at Fight Circus 3 will not be happening because instead there will be a phone booth Lethway fight.
Headbutts in the phone booth. Headbutts in the phone booth.
Which means Muay Thai rules, bare knuckle, and headbutts allowed. Oh my God. So I consider that an upgrade. I think that's going to be something. I didn't realize that Nong Rose was fighting in the card. Nong Rose, a very famous transgendered Muay Thai fighter, will be fighting a man. And that's very exciting to me because Nong Rose, she is very accomplished as a kickboxer, and her opponent, I believe, is going to get lit up, and I think that's going to be fun. The 2-on-1 fight, Will Chope of UFC fame is fighting Bank and No Money, and that's going to be ridiculous. I feel like I need to disclose this again. I am in no way associated with Full Metal Dojo or compensated or remunerated in any fashion. This is sheer personal excitement at that ludicrous, beautiful event, and I couldn't be happier. And Ben, I'll turn it over to you.
I also am not officially associated in any way with Full Metal Dojo or the Fight Circus series of events. I am not remunerated. I am not compensated. I am just fucking excited for it. And I actually know less about this card than I did about the first couple. Like the first couple, I was like reading down the cards, like, oh, I can't wait for this, that. At this point, it's kind of like going to a really, really high-end restaurant where you know they're going to serve you a 14-course meal of like surprise and delight your palate, and you're just going to buckle in and like enjoy the ride. That's what I'm looking at Fight Circus 3. I do love just a little bit of subversiveness in having a trans woman fight a man, just because you get all those kind of forum knuckleheads who's like, well, what are you going to do when a biological this fights? It's like
during Pride Month, no less. So
during Pride Month, no less. Like there's something just kind of like a fun little like tweaking of the stupid narrative by having a trans woman fight a man, and probably gonna whoop his ass.
She's gonna light him up. She's gonna, like straight up. She's gonna light this French guy up.
But yeah, I'm super excited for that. And yeah, the UFC card again, like Jay, zero disrespect to any of the 26 fighters because they are all UFC level fighters. But you could argue that outside of the main event, there's not another fight on this card that is undeniably main card material.
Like yeah, so I mean Fight Circus 3 is definitely the main attraction for me this coming week for obvious reasons. I mean, Lethway in a phone booth, need I say more? Are they're still doing the Siamese boxing?
New generation Siamese kickboxing is on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is it. But for the sake of, you know, just what we do normally here, just a couple things I want to highlight on the UFC's card before we get up out of here. Outside of the main event, of course, Tim Means versus Danny Roberts. Oh my God, the violence potential in that. To see Hot Chocolate versus the UFC's Mike Sloan is going to be absolutely wonderful.
God. He does look like Mike Sloan.
Oh my God, I never saw that.
Absolutely wonderful. And I'm also very curious how the pronunciation of Jandiroba is going to go this time. So
Jandiroba.
Yeah, so I'm very curious about that. But fellas, I think that's going to do it for this week on Unleash. Big shout out to Ben and Jay every week for holding it down without me last week. Much appreciated. Some content going up on the Walkout Network despite me going full-time daddy mode and not doing anything work related. So but you know where to find these two fellas at. That is Sherdog.com. You can find their articles. And of course, you can find me on the Body Lock and MMA on Point. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. And until next week, stay beautiful, stay positive, jump in a phone booth and headbutt somebody, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace. Dana White's an American hero.